Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you all. And in a particular way, I would like to thank Professor Jaouad Radouani, who has joined us, and he will be speaking to us today in our Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development webinars, which take place every Wednesday at the same time, and we use the same link. And it's really a pleasure now to introduce Professor Jaouad Radouani, who is Associate Professor of Cultural Studies at the Multidisciplinary Faculty of Nador, University Mohamed I in Morocco. And he'll be taking us through a very important theme, namely peace studies in the Mena region, promoting peace through teaching and or studying the humanities. So Dr. Jaouad Radouani, you are highly welcome to speak to us. At the end of your presentation, there will be time for questions, comments, where we share our experiences. So I would like now to ask everybody to please mute your microphones, and then the floor is yours, Jaouad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. Well, I've been so glad to get first introduced to the peace studies, article publishing, the project through which we went all through. And I think that it's being finalized by these days. Well, it's been, a pleasure to contribute with an article on peace studies. And I was following all the things you're doing out there. And when you launched the call for, talks, online talks about peace studies, I volunteered and I said, why shall I not, speak from a North African perspective myself and talk about, the value of peace studies nowadays. Well, and here I am. Today I want to talk about the value of the studying the humanities and how when studying the humanities, our understanding contributes, to our understanding of the world. And that understanding, which is all about bringing justice and equality to the human world or the world where we're living, it helps us establish peace. So peace then becomes an outcome of our understanding of what the humanities are about. Well, I've been lately reading, a chapter, a book, but I came through a chapter. The book is written by Burton Russell, the British philosopher. In the title of the book is Problems of Philosophy. And the last chapter is about what is the value of studying philosophy. Well, what he says is this. Well, the humanities or philosophy doesn't help us, give final answers to big questions. But it helps us anyway, understand a lot or much about, our being in the world. So it's this understanding of being in the world with others that matters most. So we are not alone. We are together. We are living with others, not individually. So philosophy or the humanities, by making us understand what's being is, what existence is, what's our identity, who we are, where are we going, or where are we heading as humans, we come, it helps us develop, much understand a lot of things that help us understand the world, and thus it helps us bring justice to this world where we are living. And justice, when we're talking about justice and equality, we're talking about peace. I would like to give an example, a small example from the daily things we're teaching at the university or studying. And I would And I would begin by giving a little explanation between, culture and nature, and then move on to identity and maybe society and other issues. Well, when we take a deep look at what nature is, we understand that the ecosystem or the ecosphere within which we are living should not be, in conflict with us as humans. So from an eco-critical, point of view, that the human being is part of the wider, ecological surrounding. So we are not masters of nature, and nature itself is not our master. But all we have to do is to change up the way we understand nature, and then develop, systems of thought that help us, live in peace with our ecological sphere, with our environment. And then if we move to culture, and then start studying, our cultures in detail. I mean, from the cultures from the small cultures that have been developed by small communities to the largest, cultures and manifestations of civilization that have been, produced in advanced countries like or societies like Europe and America and China and other places. So, as some thinkers like Levi-Strauss and others mentioned, so when we're studying these cultures, we always come to the conclusion that there are no differences between any culture. So the more we grasp what a culture is, the more we understand that there shouldn't be conflicts between one culture and the other. And this is by itself a sort of bringing down to the table the idea of equality of cultures. So if nature and culture are not against us, and we are not against them, it means that we should all be living in harmony and on an equal basis in this world or on this planet Earth, which is bringing us together as humans. If I move again to the question of identity from a perspective of cultural studies or the humanities, when we go deep into a diagnosis of how human identities are built, we come out to the conclusion that what is an identity? It's a psychological thing that grows within or grows up within each human being, depending on, the place, the geography, the atmosphere and the surrounding, the language and the things that are surrounding him. So that's how any human being as a little born or as a tabula rasa comes to grow or to make himself grow as an identity, as a being. So that identity is the number, I would say, the scratches put on a blank paper. So if this happens to every individual around the world, and everybody enlarges it as much as he can or as much as he wants, depending on the experiences he goes through when living in this world, well, I see, or some thinkers, and many of them have seen that there is no difference between me, you, and everybody and anybody out there in the world. We are all building ourselves the same, on the basis that the products or the culture we develop is the same, and nature is the same everywhere. There are trees, streets, houses, buildings, mountains, languages, schools, institutions, and this is a shared, these are shared facts about every human being anywhere in the world. So our identities, there might be some differences in language, there might be some differences in the way we dress, in the way we behave to some extent. But by the end of the day, our behavior, our dress, and everything we do is only, a sort of manifestation of our humanity. So, and since it's human, it's something that is common, shared, and must, I would say, and should be or must be accepted, because it comes out from within. And then if we move to another concept, which is the self and society, Well, I think that the selves, any self out there in the world, is based or is given birth either by those who understand it as an evolutionary product. I mean those who see that it's nature that built us that way, or those that say that it's God. Well, by the end of the day, a self is a self. It has the morals and the values within it itself that are that always come with him, pre-established with birth. I see that there is no one in the world who's not a baby and is not scared of war. Everybody hates war. So hate is a common value. That's a common value that is negative. And love is something that is everybody agrees on that it's positive. So I see that hate and love are one thing, and they are on an equal basis. No one in this world, would say that something like war is something which should be, positive or taken for granted, that it's something that should be there. So since human values, I would, summarize them in hate and love are common and the same and shared. I think that this gives us the idea that even our human values are the same. So why should there be any type of conflict? Why should we hate each other? And nowadays the example is the one of Russia and Ukraine, where a war is being waged. And I think that no one in the world, even the Russians themselves and the Ukrainians, would go like, we are against this war. We don't want it. We want peace. We want to settle down these problems as human beings, not as savages. And this is what it is all about, and that's how I understand it. To put all what I said into one envelope, I would say that it's only through studying the humanities and understanding the human nature deeper than we do nowadays, that we can be allowed in the future to overcome much of our conflicts and many of our misunderstandings that are bringing so much trouble to our world as human beings, who should be in fact living as human beings, expressing themselves as human beings, manifesting themselves as human beings, who are always who always prefer or like or give importance to love over hatred. So if we are guided by goodwill, and I don't think that there is any human being out there in the world who is guided by ill will. Everybody, inside, by nature, inside of himself, prefers things that are loving, that are good, that are beautiful over anything that is, that is bad, evil, and so on and so forth. So as I see it, again, whether we're studying philosophy, culture, cultural studies, linguistics, language, whatever, I see that the aim is one. It's always one. We are heading through these studies towards understanding much about our nature as human beings. And at the same time, if we're not discovering new things, at least the things that have been discovered are enough. We as professors at the university, we are explaining to students these things, and on the basis that these things, that our students become more tolerable, more understanding, ready to accept others, ready to establish peace in this world. So, and I think that we have so much effect on our students and on everybody around, and society after, and the world community too. So if I'm helping in this part of the world, through the humanities, build, selves that are more peaceful, I think that this has an effect on the rest of the world. So if anybody doing so anywhere in the world, he would be contributing himself to establishing peace somehow through the humanities, and that's how we are building a future that is safe and peaceful, and which would be sustained, I would say sustained through the humanities and only through the humanities. Because if I turn over the page and would talk about the technique or the sciences that are practical, I would say that those sciences haven't brought so much peace to the world as I see it. So think about the physics, the chemistry, all the mathematics. By the beginning of the 20th century, I would go even to the Renaissance in Europe, when the European societies have given up the church and all the religions that are there, that were out there guiding humanity towards the abyss. It's only science that came and saved them. It's through science that those people or that part of the world began rediscovering its humanity. But by the 19th century and the 20th century, they have discovered that science has gone too far and it turned against the humans. Why? Because the technique has overcome what is human. So I should say that with the First World War, the Second World War, the sinking of the Titanic, so many people have lost confidence in science. I mean by science, I mean exact sciences, maths, physics, chemistry, and other things. So now, to balance things, I'm not against science itself, but to balance things, we have to revalue, our need to the humanities as a people, wherever we are in the world, so that we balance this world and bring it down to a peaceful state, which would, help us sustain ourselves as beings and the coming generations, and the environment that is surrounding us too. And I think that's all I have to say about how the humanities, can contribute or help, establish peace through the world, and that's all.
All right. So thank you so much, Jaouad, for this wonderful presentation. And I'm sure it was really very clear to everybody, very, very interesting. And now it's time for questions, comments, sharing of experiences. And so you may raise your hand or just use the golden hand, which is given by our technology. And yeah, so of course you can also put your question in chat and we will read it. Wonderful, wonderful. So who would like to begin? I think this, yeah. Yes, Janet, please. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
There we go.
Yes,
Lower
great.
hand. Hello, thank you for this presentation. It's very interesting. I think I got a very clear sense of your point of view.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering what you would want to know from us. What kind of response would you want from us? I was thinking that in many ways I agree with you, especially with this statement, that kind of summary statement you said in the end. We have to revalue our humanity. We have to bring it in balance with the sciences. And so I thought that was powerful. And because you're talking about humanities, I think that you're talking about, talking to academics in a way, right? Are you talking, well, because we're such a mixed audience, I wonder what you want from us. What can we give you more? Because your presentation was so complete in itself. It didn't have a rough edge that I could question you about. But I would like us to go deeper in the discussion. So can you ask us a question? And then maybe I can get a better question for you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your word, your kind word. Well, you asked what would I like you to bear in mind. Well, I think that I don't want you to have something precise in your mind, because your presence your presence out there is already something of value. Listening, it's through sharing things, ideas, having an audience from different parts of the world, listening and share, you feel listening to you, and talking always has an effect. We don't always have to find where and how, but by itself, by its being there, it already means that things have taken place, and that's how I see it. Your reaction is a proof, is already a proof that sharing our humanity is ongoing.
Great. Thank you so much, both Janet and Radouani, for this nice question and response. Now I'll go to Joe and then Afiz. So Joe, please.
Oh, greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I really loved it. I think I love humanities, I love philosophy and all that so much. So it's really struck a chord with me. I just wanted to I guess make a comment. I'm realizing throughout human history, we've been working backwards. It's almost like this late in the game, we have to learn how to be humans again. But we've been humans for this whole time. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, in fact, if you just look at the history of, I guess, the rulership of the world, it's always been about who's stronger, who's more powerful. And so that's who we've had to listen to for the longest time of our existence. But only now are we realizing, I think we need thinkers. We need thinkers, in the steering wheel. And then it's like now we're trying to find the right order to order ourselves in a way that will help us, as opposed to what we've seen, what we've experienced so far. So I really loved your presentation.
Exactly, you're right. I can't agree more. You're right.
Great. Let's go to Afiz, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Dr. George, for the moderating aspect of it. I will have a question and some comments. My question is that when you begin your presentation, you made mention a particular book, The Problems of Philosophy by Burton Russell, if I may get you right. Is that correct? Is the problems of the philosophy that you are talking about, the text you are talking about, is it from Burton Russell that talks about the value?
Can you repeat again the question? Yeah. I heard you, but would you?
The problem of philosophy that you mentioned, is it the one written by Burton Russell?
Is it the one what?
Written by Burton Russell.
I didn't get it.
Who is the author of the book that you mentioned?
Yeah, Bertrand Russell.
Okay, good. What I'm now saying that you talked about the value, which is the last discussion of Bertrand Russell in that book. Are you saying that Bertrand Russell shared the same view with what you said now, that every human being are one and the same, that every culture have no differences, but we may differ in language? Is it the same or standing or defense of Bertrand Russell? What is the projection? What is the ideal of Bertrand Russell about human existence? Am I communicating?
Yes. I think that Bertrand Russell's view to the world is universal. He's not dealing with details. He's not dealing with cases. He is trying in a number of lectures. He's been trying to see the world from a wider view, in which he talks to men, women, everybody on this earth, on an equal basis, and sees everybody as a human being who should care about the future. Advises us as human beings not talk or discuss men, women, animals, this or that. Mental capacities, do not allow him to go down to some details which would, entangle him in some problems which have no solutions. What he talks about is general. He mentions three things. He says that being is all about security, justice, and a third thing, I forgot the third element. So it's all about security and justice. So we have to be secure in this world and bring justice to this world. So these things are the ones that the thinker, mentions and defends. And he doesn't, in his address, doesn't mention a he or a she, because we as humans are one. There is no difference. We can't come to peace or talk peace and at the same time talk gender. If we do so, we are becoming unequal, and then we'll go contradicting ourselves. So when we say human, the word human is general. It generates all types of gender. There are no differences between human beings, and there shouldn't be ones. And that's all.
Okay, based on your explanation, now as from your own view, from your own perspective, what you presented, is it what we are actually experiencing in the world today? And if it is not, what can we do to achieve this for us, or for the peace and justice and securing the whole world entirely to be safe? Do you get me?
Yes, to some extent.
All right.
What I would like to say is that, I don't see things from the point of view you're trying to see them, and I wouldn't allow myself to do so even in the future, because the experiences we go through, as I said before, might culturally differentiate. But as Joe mentioned, he said something. He said we have already been humans in this world. Yes, we are humans, but we are half conscious humans. We are not yet ready to understand, or we haven't yet been ready to understand what is our humanity fully. We have understood it 50%, and we're still trying in the future to become fully conscious human beings. And the proof is that the mistakes we are still committing nowadays, you, me, and everybody around. Yes, we know we are humans. What we don't understand consciously to what extent, or what is our humanity in total.
Right. Thank you. And
what can we do to understand human in totality, and for us to be able to have peace and get right and resolve all conflicts and crises in the world, or even to the minimum? We cannot remove it.
We are trying. We are trying our best.
If we are actually trying, why are we still experiencing war here and there, especially the one going on in Russia and Ukraine?
Maybe those haven't studied the humanities well. They need to go back to school again. Well.
All right. Correct.
Okay.
all right, and can I go to Joe again? And I can see also there's a question in chat. So Joe, please go first.
Okay, I actually would like to suggest an answer for what Afiz is asking. What's the solution? You mentioned it, right? I think you were talking about the things we have in common as human beings. And I feel like that's the answer. If we cling to what we have in common as a collective, and then from there we move from there. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure if we have so many differences that are glaring at us, right? But if we really look, we'll find there's also infinite similarities as well. And so if we just like incline towards those ones and ignore the differences, I feel like so many solutions will come from that. Yes, I think that's a good place to start looking for the answer.
I would like to pick the word collective from your speech. You said the collective. If we go for something in collective. Now, if we go back to political law, to Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the thinkers of the Enlightenment, I think that the basis of everything, how they theorized it in any society, if they go back to the collective, we will never err. We will never commit a mistake. You see, what does he call the collective? He calls it the sovereign. And when the sovereign decides, the sovereign is me, you, and everybody out there. If we come together and never let any type of publicity or type of ideology to guide us, will never miss being right. Itself becomes a state that rules itself by itself, and it assigns power to a ruler. I mean a government. If we follow this system, we as a sovereign, and on condition that we never forget that the state is us, that a government is us, and it's we the sovereign. I think that you are coming from Africa. And if we go back to small villages in Africa, any small village, there are always those elders who rule the community. And as I see it, and as you have gone through it, those people, that sovereign in a society, in a small village in the Congo or wherever in Africa, when they come together, they never err. And even when there is a slight mistake, it's easy to correct it and come out with, systems of thought, regulations and laws, which could drive peacefully any community out there, whether in Africa or anywhere in the world. Think about it. We are 8 billion human in this world. If we come together and never allow any ideology to guide us, to bring us away from each other, to guide us through their own, ideological, goals, we will certainly find the solution, and it's easy to find. But our problem nowadays, when we're talking about conflicts, it's not that we can't, bring peace to this world. There are that do, you see, so us the needed solution, we are seeing the hating each other, fights, conflicts, wars, frictions will continue in the future.
And now we go to...
Okay.
Perfect sense.
Great.
Thank you so much. I love it.
Great. Let's go to Janet first, and then we go to the chat.
Oh, okay.
Janet, yes, please.
Sorry, I was going to pick up Nick's question too, which is very good in the chat of, well, how do we make our connectedness? But I think I'll let you follow up on that and instead go with, so Burton Russell is someone who I use in my work too, because he not only did he have this philosophy that you're describing, but he also formed in the 60s a people's tribunal against, it was called Against the Crime of Silence. And it's contentious politics, organizing people to object to the US war in Vietnam. And so he wasn't saying maybe underneath that, he was saying we're all connected. But at the same time, he's saying this government is wrong and this war is wrong. And I think that's one of the outcomes of feeling connected. We feel that war is wrong. You kind of made this point. But my point is that what you're espousing is a very heartfelt, humanistic connectedness, and you are espousing a cornerstone of philosophy that you don't want to, with good reason, you want to hold down that position and not let it be swayed by negativity and winds of aggression. And I agree with that. I believe we have to hold our position as best we can. At the same time, we're always confronted, even because I work in peace, et cetera, we are confronted with the different views that people have. For example, my feminist peace and peace education colleagues in the Ukraine, who I know many years and work with, were saying, you must, in Europe and the US, you must institute a no-fly zone. And because I studied that, I know that no-fly zone is actually an act of aggression in other ways. Like, I'm against the United States making a no-fly zone, because that means United States planes are flying and shooting down other planes that go in that zone. So I'm against it. But my dear beloved colleagues were arguing for it. So I understand, because they're being bombed, how they would have a different view from me sitting in my nice little desk in New York. So I think we have to add to this philosophy, this foundational philosophy of connectedness, the role of contention, and how we dialogue, deliberate, how we struggle peacefully on these issues. So can you address that? I think the philosophy would have a lot of to say. Your philosophy. Okay. The humanities would have a lot to say. Thank you for listening to that long.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I can't agree more with what you said. You know, Bertrand Russell, you know, I've been reading him, you know, lately, just for the sake of, you know, reading. But I came through some ideas that are revolutionary. It's somebody who's not guided by an ideology, and that's something which is beautiful about Bertrand Russell. All he's guided by is humanity, is the humanism of humans. He's trying to restore in his writings to the human beings their confidence, and he's trying to show them the way towards peace. And you mentioned feminism. What is feminism anyway? Why did feminism come out as a movement? Why do women have to fight for their rights? It's because there is absence of rights, because they feel that there is oppression, that there are things that are against inhumanly, you know, practiced or opposed on them in this world. So by talking peace, we are directly, you know, talking feminism. So who are feminists, I would say? Aren't they a revolutionary movement, you know, represented by women who are defending the rights of women? I mean, defending the rights of women against those who are neglecting or denying them those rights. So as long as there is denial, there is a movement which goes against that denial. So it's all a movement that defends equality and justice in this world. And as an example, in that, yes, go ahead.
No,
Yes?
I want to say that I think that you are, I hope you don't feel insulted, but I want to say you are a feminist and a revolutionary in this view. And I really appreciate it. And I couldn't agree with you more that those of us working for rights of people who are who don't have full equality. But sometimes people say those are the people who are making trouble. And so how do you have a theory of deliberation for justice? Like how do we, I heard you use the word sovereign. And to me, sovereign sounds like oppression or homogenization, you know, when we're all supposed to think the same. So how do you address sovereignty and the problem of the oppression of homogenization? How do you address those in your thinking? If you want to answer that, I don't know. Might be too much.
For this question, I would like to go a little back into history so that I can show my point of view and how I understand things, if you would allow it. Is that fine? Okay. Look, first, when I use the word sovereign, it has a wider meaning than the one you mentioned, or the one which is daily used by people. What is the sovereign in political theory? I mean the basis. What is a sovereign? A sovereign is me and you. Is me and you sitting together and ruling a village or trying to decide about our future in our community. If you come, suppose that you are a representative of your people, and the women have an issue, and we sit together somewhere, and the sovereign then is me and you who are going to represent those people. So if you speak in the name of women and say, look, women in our society are denied something and they want it back, and then we decide that it's a law, we are the sovereign and we have to accept that law as the ones who decreed it and the ones who are going to apply it. You see? So then the women in society become themselves a sovereign by themselves. You see? So that's how I understand it in a wider view. As for the solution, I see it this way. Let's go back to Marxism. Let's go back to Marxism so that we can understand, the situation better. There was a world that is growing. There was a civilization that is being developed. And then, socially speaking, societies have been stratified in a way that is unequal, in which there is no justice. The nobility at the top, the bourgeoisie or the middle classes in the middle, and the proletarians or the poor people down of the pyramid. You see? So the situation which economy created in our world after it developed is not equal. It takes a shape of a pyramid. The few up there are ruling the world, the majority down are being ruled, and they are poor. So what did Marxism or socialism came to do? It all came to do justice to the poor classes. It all came to restore justice back, economically speaking. I'm speaking economically. So the ones that are taking everything, who are living up in the pyramid, should share with the ones who are down. This way, Marx explained everything from beginning to end, from the commodity to the labor question to the capitalism. How does capital, get amazed? So, and he explained things and said, look how things are worked out there in a world, in a capitalist world, and said that we have to restructure our society. Then the proletarians came out as revolutionary factions in society who are conscious about, and I do underline the word conscious, as a conscious fraction or a class of societies who are defending their rights against a capitalist system that is taking everything from them. Now, if we move it, take it from economy to another situation, which is the situation of rights in a society. Then what did women do? What did the ex-colonized do? What did the blacks do? What did a lot of types of underrepresented people do? They have been inspired by the equality movement in the world of economy that the Marxists have tried to bring to the table and explain to the people. They have been inspired by this system of thought that is purely economic and Marxist, and said, why don't we adopt a point of view in which we as underrepresentatives, as marginalized people or factions of a society defend our rights? And then a lot of movements have been given birth on the basis that they are, as you said before, revolutionary. They wanted a change. They wanted more rights. They wanted more justice, more equality. So women as a category of people, and I think that you are well acquainted with the word intersectionality, who are underrepresented, who are not given much of their rights in society, who are being oppressed in many ways. They have tried to stir a sort of movement whose goal or objective is to regain some sort of justice, but always adopting, a Marxist or a revolutionary point of view or ideology that would help them restore back some of their rights that have been lost. So this way, I see that the feminist movement is a movement that is right and has the right to defend itself, and its place in this world is right. It represents the under women, and the same would happen for men. I mean, the men who belong to the any woman anywhere in the world who's trying to bring more. At the same time, I think that women do not neglect all other people, marginalized, classes in society, rights, and at the same time they are defending other underrepresented people or oppressed people's rights. So any movement that is around, I mean, the structure, the low structure in society, they are voicing, or they are a voice that is trying to bring, it's a call, I would say, it's a call for more justice, more peace.
Yeah, we can see that the speaker's bandwidth is low. I think that's also slowing things down a bit, but I hope that can be fixed. I would like now to ask Ian, because I can see he has raised his hand. Ian, please. Please, yes, unmute.
Sorry, forgot to unmute. Sorry.
That's all right.
I was impressed by Dr. Principal Speaker, whose surname now escapes me, he's disappeared from the screen, was leading us to a discussion of the, there we are, he's back on board again, the discussion between human thinking capacity, philosophy, and the future of science. And we seem to have gone off on a number of tangents. So I would like to bring us back to that original line of thinking for a moment. We have reached the stage where humanity believes it has greater capacity and authority than it has. We are not creators. We are not creating anything. We are tending to destroy because of our misuse of the accumulated knowledge, which is only made possible through divine gifts in the first place. We are all the product of the one and only creator. And when we accumulate knowledge from experience to put it to good use in the development or construction, the development of scientific proposals in many ways, then all we are doing is utilizing that God-given gift of intelligence. But we are taking it too far, too quickly. The exponential growth of population from 1 billion in 1820 to 9 billion in 20 years from now has swept us off our feet, and people have developed the idea that they can create, and in creating they have absolute control over what they can do and the future. And that's all false. And our philosophers have got to start getting public thinking back on track. We have the classic examples now of the misuse of science in the numerous bio-warfare laboratories around the world, the biggest one being Fort Detrick in the United States. And we are seeing the effects of misuse of science, the misuse of the human intelligence, and it's leading us down the wrong path. And if we carry on the way we're going, then humanity is going to self-destruct. So I want to see us put more emphasis on philosophical examination of where we are and where we're going, so that there can be constraints applied on the abuse of scientific development.
We are the world. We are the children. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that contribution, Ian. Have you got any response, Jadwan, or on that?
I agree on what Mr. Ian Fry said. He's right. He summarized everything in a very good way. That's precisely what I was all about.
Great. There was a question in chat, and that's from Nick, that there are many factors that influence and shape human identities. What might be approaches to foster an identity of oneness and equality?
Yes, you're right. So of oneness and equality. When we're speaking about equality, we can't speak about oneness. You know, you can't, that's contradictory. Equality means that it is accepting, you know, differences, and at the same time being ready to change towards any type of identity, adopting any other identity, because the fear to lose our identities is senseless. It's senseless nowadays. We are talking about, you know, losing identities in this, or immigrating identities in this 21st century of internet and so on and so forth. So everybody is afraid of that huge, monstrous, ghastly identity, which we are trying to adopt, and it changes us. No, it doesn't. I think that we have to have a universal identity. We have to go beyond our individualistic ways of seeing our identities as contradictory to others. And this way, and only this way, we could become what we would aspire to, a world, a universal citizen.
Great. We are doing well. And Ian, do you have another problem or just comment? I can see your hand is raised, the golden hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just forgot to
that's
knock
all right.
it down.
That's all right. Janet, please.
Yes, thank you, George. Ian, I am very secular in my view, and yet I see my view as segueing and fitting with yours. I don't think that, a theological view, I think a theological view is one way to look at things that doesn't have to conflict with a more secular view. So I'm not arguing, and I say this as I pull the conversation again back to the idea of justice as something that humans, where human agency is involved. And I want to ask Professor Radouani, what do you think about, because you mentioned positively human rights, and I feel that there's a great backlash against human rights and law. Well, let's leave law aside. But some of us have been working to generate human rights and international laws, as you said, to include more protections for more people in the world. At the same time, other people say, oh, it's human rights are just from the United States and Europe and the great powers that oppressed us in the past. It's a way to oppress us again. So how do you speak about human rights? I mean, you've said some things already, but human rights and justice, I see them, human rights, justice, peace, dignity, and the dignity of every human being. I see those all interrelated and interdependent.
Exactly.
That's my question. So what do you do with these arguments about human rights? I mean, I'm from the oppressor countries. So here are all these people from post-colonial countries. I need to learn more from you. Thank you. I turn off my video, so maybe yours will be stronger.
I can see that he's frozen for some reason. Maybe it's the bandwidth. And so I don't know if you can hear us.
But perhaps, George, someone else while we're waiting, someone else could address it. Other people have thoughts on that, you think, while we're waiting?
Maybe. Sure, let's see whether somebody will try and respond to that. Ian, have you raised your hand? Please. And please unmute.
I have. What Janet has just been saying raises so many issues And on the question of human rights and developing them to offset all of the problems that have been caused by the abuse of rights by others in the past, it's very significant. In 2010, I was a member of a 5-party group in organising a conference in Kuala Lumpur that brought together some 75 great thinkers from a couple of prime ministers upwards and downwards, Malcolm Fraser, General Obasanjo, other people of that nature. We got them all together with the aim, and it was jointly led by the late Judge Christopher Wirramantry, the former Deputy President of the International Court of Justice, one of the greatest of human beings. Anyway, the aim of that conference was to set up a process to start to influence Western thinking to permit the recognition of non-Western philosophies and understandings at international law. And, this was obviously led by Christopher Wirramantry. He could see very well that so many judgments were being influenced absolutely by Western thinking, and we were trying to get out of that. Well, we were able to set up an advisory committee of 18 people that worked for about 2 years, but we needed a lot of money, and the money just did not come in to appoint staff and research. So, and the reason was that people in the West would just, those who had the philanthropic capacity were not in the least interested in taking control of world thinking and world affairs out of the hands of the West. Putting it bluntly, that's it in a nutshell. And we face that with the question of human rights and how to build them into the current system of global governance through the United Nations. And we've got to give a great deal of thought to the reconstitution of the United Nations to bring the authority back where it ought to be in the hands of the total global community and not in the hands of Janet's and my part of the world. This makes the understanding of the relationship between philosophy and theology, because you can't separate the two, but we might get to that later in the year. We've got to get a fresh thinking about the relationship between human capacity, human understanding, capacity to manipulate what we have to take advantage of, and the limitations of the abuse of science. Sorry, but I had to say all of that as a follow-on. I'm trying to support what Janet was saying. And of course, what our chief speaker was saying. It's all tied in together.
Great. Thank you so much for this inspiring explanation. And I don't know whether Jaouad is still with us. Can you hear us? And
yes, I can hear you, John.
Okay, great. I don't know whether you heard what Janet said, and maybe actually I saw a question in chat that's directed to Janet. Janet, if you don't mind, there's this question from Nick is asking, isn't being from an oppressor country part of an identity that separates?
Should I respond to this?
If yes, please.
Well, we can speak from Nick, we can speak from different parts of our identity. I have multiple roles and experiences and flexibility of how I look at the world. I imagine when I'm a bit defensive when I say that, because when I come on, I realize that I'm almost the only woman here. I'm from New York. I'm from the United States. I'm Jewish. I mean, just when people know that, they hate me already before I say anything. And so as our speaker is saying, I offer my humility in the face of all this, and I don't come out fighting with my identity. I'm more from I'd like to act more from I have my opinions and positions that I fight from sometimes, like say on Roe versus Wade, but at the same time, mainly I think my best role is to function as a facilitator, mediator, trying to bring out the other voices. So maybe, you know, by saying, look, I see that I'm not from Africa, but I get the privilege of being in this seminar, and I'm learning so much from everyone. So, you know, maybe it's an elicitive technique to facilitation technique to say, I'm from the United States. Now, please talk about this colonial oppression more if you want, or human rights as oppression. Please let me know what you think. Okay, that's my.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janet, for this explanation. And there is actually a comment which I find quite interesting. Well, first of all, from Nick saying, thank you for your answer, Janet. I love you for your candid humanity. Your identity is a reflection of awareness. Haha, wonderful, isn't that lovely? Now, this comment is from Mora. Human rights is just a bruise overturned Roe against Wade, which over their own bodies, even within life-threatening situations. In Britain, the Westminster Parliament is at this very moment overturning the EU laws for the Court of Human Rights so that they can remove any and all rights of any person as they see fit within the UK. It goes a lot deeper and broader, but that is only two current examples of what is happening in the world today. Food for thought. I'm wondering whether Jaouad is with us. Yes, please, if you want to comment or add anything at this moment, please do.
Well, it's been amazing to be among you. Thank you, everybody, for giving me this chance to share ideas with you and learn from you. I learned so much. At the same time, I've been, you know, trying to share what I know. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And, sure. Just to figure out whether there is anything more in chat just before we conclude for today. And Joe, please.
Oh,
you've raised your
yes.
hand. Yes.
Yes, I have. So I had a comment. I actually wanted to respond to something Janet had asked earlier. It was about the sovereign and the fear of the homogeneity and it being oppressive in a way. So my thoughts on the sovereign, right, is that the sovereign provides something like an anchor so that the rest of the community can be autonomous in the best way, right? So the sovereign doesn't define what everybody should do. It's like, for example, if the sovereign decides it's okay for us to have cars, vehicles, so that we can move around, right? And then every individual gets to decide what kind of car they want. We don't all have to drive the same car, you know, as long as the sovereign has agreed on, we want cars for this purpose, and if we use them like this, they're not going to hurt us. Then now everyone has the freedom to get the car they want. You know what I mean? So it's like with everything, even anybody who feels oppressed, we address the thing where they feel oppressed, but then knowing that we are all living together, and maybe in that area, maybe there's how it's injuring other people unawares, you know, so then it becomes a conversation. And it's not like we're not trying to just block your rights. We just want to do this properly for everyone who experiences this thing happening, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, so like the sovereign doesn't become like a judge, you know, giving the final say or something, because it's like, it really is, we know that there's a good way for everyone, you know, but we don't know what it is now. So it's an opportunity for us to figure out what that place is.
Right, let me turn to Ronald. Welcome back. Could you ask your question? Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. George. I apologize for coming late, but better be late than never. I have a question in the chat box, going to Ian Frey. What is the role of God in promoting the human rights today in relation to peace building? Thank you.
Did you hear that, Ian? And there's something also in the background, but I think the question is the role of God, right, in today's world. And maybe Ian, do you hear us? Could you repeat your question, Ronald? Please, and yes.
I can't hear a word he's saying. I can just hear a muffled sound in the background.
Yeah, please repeat your question, Ronald.
Thank you so much. Ian, could you please comment on the role of God in promoting equality and human rights in relation to peace building in Africa?
Oh, you've asked a very big question, and one which I don't think I can do justice to in 1 or 2 minutes. I am an absolute theist. That is, I'm a very firm believer in the existence of a single divine unit, whatever we like to call it, and that I've done a lot of work on the concept of covenant. I have published some papers, but I'm about to try and publish them further to establish an understanding that a covenantal relationship between the divine and the human applies not only to the individual person, but to the corporate body, be it a community or a nation. And that eventually the abuse of neighbours, and this is what the concept of covenant is all about, relationships between neighbours, that the abuse of neighbours by the dominant Western world is bringing us to a situation where there's an inversion of relationships between the Western world and the non-Western world, and it's not happening quickly enough, but it is happening slowly, and this is consistent with the mechanism of, you might call it divine control. I don't see it as divine control. I see it as the consequences of the abuse of the understanding of the relationship between humanity and the divine. My hope is that the change takes place quickly enough so that we don't get to the stage where we have a major world war again. But the way that the United States and some of its neighbours, including Australia, we're being dragged along by the bootstraps, trying to manipulate the control of world affairs out of the hands of China and its allies. And you've got to remember that China is supported by 3/5 of the world community. It's a load of garbage to say that everyone is supporting the Western view of the situation in the Pacific or anywhere else. I could go into the figures of which groups are supporting who and so on, but it's becoming more and more definite that the power struggle will continue until there is some event which causes the virtual economic and military collapse of the Western world and forces the world to accept the reconstruction of international systems of law, justice, and administration of trade and everything else. So I'm sorry, you ask a simple question, I've given you not such a simple answer, but as far as I'm concerned, God's in there right up to our noses.
Thank you so much, Ian. Actually, it wasn't a simple question. You could just write books and books about it as a thesis for another PhD. And so on that, really, I thank you so much, everybody, for your participation. Promoting equality and human rights today in relation to peace building in Africa. Okay, that was dealt with. And so, Ronald, do you still have a question? Your hand is raised.
Yes, allow me to post a word of thanks to Ian for tackling that question. And I humbly request him to briefly comment on the relevance of many leaders taking oath of offices, holding holy books. What is that significance? Does it still apply?
I'm sorry, I was having difficulty hearing that also. Would you? I'll try and turn my volume up again at this end, see if I can hear you better. Would you say it again, please?
Please repeat, Ronald.
Most leaders today hold holy books while taking oaths of their offices, signifying they are ready to obey the Lord while serving. According to you, does this still make sense because of the increasing abuse of offices and peace violations? Thank you.
I'm not sure whether I grasp what you're saying, but you're talking about the relationship between taking oaths on holy books and acting out our beliefs. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, I am not in favour of sworn statements being taken on holy books. It doesn't matter which holy book they are. I think people are either telling the truth or they're not telling the truth, and it doesn't make any difference to most of them whether they've taken a sworn oath or not. So I'm not sure where that leads to with your question. It doesn't diminish the influence of the divine in human affairs. What it does is introduce a false level of authority for an understanding of particular holy books. And earlier in this session, I think it was Professor Radouani made reference to the authority of not magistrates, sovereigns. And the abuse of sovereign power is just so rampant throughout Western history, based on the misuse of the Christian Bible, that we've got to rethink the relationship between the law, the application of the law, and how it's administered. You only got to go back to, we talk about Africa, and that's what we're all concerned with. I am very concerned, I hope that is probably obvious, with the need for support of Africa and for Africa and Asia to have a much bigger role in world affairs, and that this will progressively correct the imbalance which has been brought about over the last 500 years. But you will all recall that the Pope of the time, or the popes, a series of them, used their influence to enslave Africa. And if that wasn't an abuse of holy books, I don't know what was. So you ask a very complex question that would take us a long time to work through.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Ian, for this brilliant explanation. And by the way, Ian will be talking to us in December, so not long, so so we can reserve questions for him. And I would like also to again thank everybody really for your participation, and thank our speaker very much, Professor Jaouad Radouani from Morocco. And so we are already clapping for him, please. And so thank you all very much indeed. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. We have another brilliant presentation, as always. So thank you, and join us again if and when you can. God bless.